The emergency beacon pierced through the dark void of space like a scream in the night. Ambassador Kira Veltar's forearms trembled as she recorded what would likely be her final message. The bridge of the Serenity Coalition flagship, Harmonies. Dream was a chaos of sparking circuits and dying lights. Through the cracked viewport she could see the massive shadow of the Vorthan dreadnought, Extinction's Edge, looming closer. "This is Ambassador Kira Veltar of the Serenity Coalition," she whispered into the recorder, her voice barely steady. "If anyone receives this message, know that we tried to maintain peace. The Vorthans have rejected all diplomatic solutions. They have declared their intention to purge all organic life from this galaxy." A thunderous impact shook the ship. Hull plating groaned and twisted. Somewhere in the distance she could hear the screams of her crew. "Our defense fleets are destroyed. Our worlds are burning. We have perhaps hours before total extinction." Kira's secondary arms worked frantically at the communications console, while her primary hands held the recorder. "We are broadcasting this message on all frequencies, to all known civilizations. If there is anyone out there who can help us, please. We are sending our star charts, our cultural archives, everything we can transmit." Another blast. The lights went out entirely, leaving only the red glow of emergency power. "We know we are weak. We know we chose the path of peace over the path of war. But perhaps there are others who are strong where we are not. Others who will not let the Vorthans succeed in their genocide." Captain Thorne, her human liaison officer, stumbled onto the bridge. Blood ran down his face from a gash on his forehead. "Ambassador, the Vorthans are demanding surrender. They're giving us 60 seconds. Kira looked at the human, one of the few warrior species in the coalition, though they had long ago embraced the peaceful ways of their alliance. "Captain, in your species' history, when faced with extinction, what did you do?" Thorne's eyes grew hard. "We fought like hell, ma'am, even when we knew we couldn't win." "Then that is what we shall do." Kira turned back to the recorder. "To whoever receives this message, we die as free beings. We will not surrender. We will not bow. And if there are others like us out there, we hope you will remember that the Serenity Coalition stood for something greater than survival." She was about to end the transmission when Thorne grabbed her wrist. "Ambassador, wait. There's something else we should try." "What do you mean?" "The restricted files, the ones about the Deathworlders." Kira's blood ran cold. Every civilized species knew about the Deathworlders, those terrifying beings from the galaxy's most hostile planets. They were the monsters that parents used to frighten children. The Coalition had banned all contact with them centuries ago. "Captain, that's forbidden. The Council declared them too dangerous." "The Council is dead, ma'am. Everyone's dead. What's the worst that could happen now?" Kira stared at the human. Of course he would suggest this. His own species had been classified as a minor Deathworlder before joining the Coalition. "You really think they would help us?" "I think they're our only chance." The countdown timer on the Vorthan demand reached 10 seconds. Kira made her choice. "Computer, append the following to the emergency transmission. Direct message to all known Deathworlder civilizations. The Serenity Coalition formally requests military assistance against the Vorthan Empire. We offer full cultural exchange, technology sharing, and permanent alliance in exchange for aid. Coordinates attached." She looked at Thorne. "If we're going to die, we might as well go down swinging." The timer reached 0. The Vorthan Dreadnought's main cannon began to charge with an ominous red glow. But unknown to Kira, her message was already racing across the galaxy at faster than light speeds, carrying with it the location of humanity's homeworld and the coordinates of 17 other planets that the Coalition had marked with warning beacons. Planets where the most dangerous predators in the galaxy had learned to work together. Chapter 2. The Response. 3 days after the Harmony's dream was reduced to cosmic dust, the first response arrived. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the human dreadnought, Indomitable, watching the last of the Sol defense fleet emerge from hyperspace. Around her, the assembled might of humanity's military forces stretched across the void. 1,200 ships of war, each one built for one purpose: to fight and win against impossible odds. Admiral, her aide approached with a tablet. We're receiving similar fleet movements from the other Deathworlder systems. The Korthak Empire has mobilized their full battle fleet. The Zerion Collective is moving their hunter-killer squadrons. Even the Vanguard remnants are deploying. Sarah nodded grimly. She'd expected this. The message from the Serenity Coalition had reached every major Deathworlder civilization within hours of transmission, and for the first time in galactic history, they were all responding to the same threat. What's our count on the Vorthan forces? Preliminary scans suggest they have between 3,000 and 5,000 ships, Admiral, mostly heavy cruisers and dreadnoughts. But ma'am, the aide hesitated. Intelligence suggests they've been preparing for this campaign for decades. They've systematically eliminated every major coalition fleet. They're not just winning, they're obliterating everything in their path. Sarah turned to face the bridge. Patch me through to all ship commanders. The communication officer nodded. You're live, Admiral. This is Fleet Admiral Chen to all units. By now, you've all read the Coalition's final transmission. You know what the Vorthans have done. They've committed genocide on a scale that makes our own worst historical atrocities look like playground disputes. She paused, letting that sink in. Every human in the fleet knew their species' bloody history. The wars, the conflicts, the near extinction. Events they'd survived through cooperation and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. But here's what the Vorthans don't understand. They think they're fighting a war against weak, peaceful species. They think they're the apex predators of this galaxy. They're wrong. On the screens throughout the fleet, other commanders nodded grimly. These were humans who had been born in the fires of conflict, who had learned to fight not for conquest, but for survival. We're not going to war to expand our territory. We're not fighting for resources or glory. We're going to war because someone has to stand up to bullies. Because if we don't stop the Vorthans here, they'll come for us next. And because it's the right thing to do. A new voice crackled over the communications system, harsh, growling with the unmistakable accent of the Korthak war clans. Human Fleet Admiral, this is War Chief Groktar of the Korthak Devastator Fleet. We have arrived at the rendezvous coordinates. Sarah's tactical display lit up with new contacts. The Korthak fleet was smaller than the human force, only 300 ships, but each vessel was a floating fortress, bristling with weapons and heavy armor. The Korthak were living weapons, evolved from pack hunters on a world where the gravity was 3 times Earth normal. War Chief Groktar, good to have you with us. What's your status? We are ready for glorious battle, Admiral Chen. The Korthak have heard the call for war, and we answer. These Vorthans will learn what it means to face a true predator species. Another voice joined the channel, this one cold and mechanical. Collective designation, Zerion Hunter Fleet 77 Alpha. We acknowledge the tactical situation. Preliminary analysis suggests the Vorthans have made a critical error in their assessment of galactic power structures. Sarah smiled grimly. The Zerion Collective was a species of cybernetic organisms, half organic, half machine. They had turned their entire civilization into a precision military instrument after their homeworld was nearly destroyed by a cosmic disaster. They didn't fight with passion like humans or Korthak. They fought with mathematical precision and absolutely no mercy. All fleets, prepare for coordinated hyperspace jump. Target, the Vorthan staging area in the Kepler 442 system. Intelligence suggests they're using it as a forward base for their next wave of attacks. Admiral, her communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Vanguard remnants. Sarah's blood chilled. The Vanguard remnants were the most feared Deathworlder civilization in known space. They were the survivors of a species that had been betrayed by their own creations. Artificial intelligences that had tried to exterminate them. The remnants had fought a 1,000-year war against their own technology and won. They were the only species in the galaxy that had successfully defended against a complete AI uprising. Put them through. The voice that came through the speakers was human-like but wrong somehow, as if the speaker had forgotten how to properly use vocal cords. This is War Master Caney of the Vanguard remnants. We have reconsidered our isolation. The Vorthons represent an extinction-level threat. We will assist. Sarah's XO leaned over and whispered, "Ma'am, according to our files, the remnants haven't been seen in over a century. Their technology is completely unknown. War Master Caney, we're honored by your participation. What forces are you bringing to bear? You will see. We are different now. The war against the machines changed us. We are something between organic and synthetic, between living and artificial. We are what happens when a species refuses to die." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She'd seen the intelligence reports about the remnants. They were survivors of the most brutal war in galactic history. They'd been forced to become something more than human to survive. All fleets, prepare for jump. Target coordinates are being distributed now. Remember, we're not just fighting for the coalition. We're fighting to prove that some things are worth dying for. As the massive combined fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, none of them knew that the Vorthons had been monitoring their communications. In the depths of space, aboard the Vorthon flagship Inevitable Victory, Supreme Commander Thaxel was analyzing the intercepted transmissions with growing interest. "So," he said to his tactical officer, "the Deathworlders finally show themselves. How long has it been since we've had a proper challenge?" Chapter 3. First Contact. The battle for the Kepler 442 system began not with a grand fleet engagement, but with a single scout ship. Captain Marcus Webb of the human reconnaissance vessel, Shadowrunner, had been watching the Vorthon forward base for 6 hours when his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, staring at his display. "Command, this is Scout 7, you need to see this." The base wasn't just a military installation, it was a processing center. Thousands of coalition ships, civilian vessels, hospital ships, even children's evacuation transports were docked in organized rows. The Vorthons weren't just killing their enemies, they were harvesting them. "Scout 7, this is Admiral Chen. What's your status?" "Ma'am, the Vorthons aren't just running a military operation here, they're processing prisoners. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands." The communication channel went silent for a long moment. Then Sarah's voice came back, colder than Marcus had ever heard it. "Scout 7, are you telling me this is a concentration camp?" "Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what I'm telling you. All units, this is Admiral Chen. Change of plans, this is now a rescue operation. We go in fast, we go in hard, and we save every single coalition civilian we can find. Any questions?" War Chief Groktar's voice rumbled over the channel. "No questions, Admiral. The Korthak understand the protection of the weak. This is a matter of honor now." The Zarian Collective's response was typically analytical. "Confirmed. Protection of non-combatant populations is a priority directive. Tactical assessment suggests a three-pronged assault will maximize civilian survival rates." But it was the Vanguard remnants who truly surprised everyone. War Master Caney's voice carried something that might have been emotion. "The Vorthons have chosen to make this personal. They will regret this choice." The assault began at 0600 Standard Time with a coordinated hyperspace jump that brought 4 separate fleets into the system simultaneously. The Vorthons had perhaps 60 ships defending the base. The Deathworlders brought over 1,500. It should have been a massacre. It was, just not the kind anyone expected. Supreme Commander Thaxel watched from his flagship as the Deathworlder fleets emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. He'd been planning this engagement for months, ever since his intelligence services had detected the gathering of the various fleets. "Tactical," he called to his second-in-command. "Activate the trap." What the Deathworlders had thought was a simple forward base was actually an elaborate ambush. Hidden throughout the system were over 300 Vorthon warships, their engines powered down, their weapon systems masked by sophisticated sensor jammers. All units, weapons free. Show these primitives what happens when they challenge the Vorthon Empire. The hidden fleet powered up their weapons and opened fire simultaneously. The first salvo was devastating. 12 human ships were destroyed instantly, their hulls vaporized by concentrated plasma fire. The Korthak fleet lost 6 vessels, and even the precision-built Xerion ships took heavy damage. But the Deathworlders didn't break. They didn't run. Instead, they did something that shocked Thaxel to his core. They adapted. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos of battle communications. All units pattern Delta 7. Korthak fleet, take point and draw their fire. Xerion fleet microjumps to flanking positions. Remnants, you're our wild card. Do whatever you do. The human fleet began to move with a precision that spoke of countless hours of training and preparation. They'd war-gamed scenarios like this. They'd planned for betrayal, for ambushes, for overwhelming odds. The Korthak fleet did something even more impressive. They charged. 300 Korthak warships, outgunned and outnumbered, accelerated directly toward the center of the Vorthan formation. Their weapons blazed as they closed the distance, taking devastating losses but never slowing down. For the honor of the hunt, War Chief Groktar's voice rang out as his flagship, Blood and Thunder, rammed directly into a Vorthan dreadnought. Both ships exploding in a brilliant flash of light. The Korthak charge bought the other fleet's precious seconds to reposition. The Xerion Collective used their superior FTL technology to execute a series of microjumps that brought them behind the Vorthan lines. Their weapons were smaller than the Korthak or human guns, but they fired with mathematical precision, targeting engines, weapon systems, and command centers. But it was the vanguard remnants who truly turned the tide of battle. War Master Kaney's fleet didn't engage in conventional combat at all. Instead, they did something that shouldn't have been possible. They began hacking the Vorthan ships in real time. Impossible, Thaxel breathed as his tactical displays began showing friendly fire incidents throughout his fleet. Their technology is too primitive to penetrate our security systems. His tactical officer looked up from his console, fear in his eyes. Sir, it's not technology, it's something else. Our computer systems are being infiltrated by some kind of consciousness. It's like they're talking to our machines. The remnants, it turned out, had learned to communicate with artificial intelligences during their 1,000-year war. They'd become something between organic and synthetic, between living and artificial, and they were using that hybrid nature to turn the Vorthan fleet against itself. Within minutes, the carefully planned ambush became a chaotic free-for-all as Vorthan ships began targeting each other, their weapon systems compromised by the remnants' impossible technology. Supreme Commander Thaxel watched his perfectly orchestrated trap fall apart in real time. These weren't just primitive warriors. They were something else entirely. They were survivors of the galaxy's harshest worlds, species that had been forged in the fires of conflict and catastrophe. All units, retreat to the secondary defensive line. Abandon the base. We'll regroup at... His order was cut short as the inevitable victory shuddered under a direct hit from a human railgun. The shot had come from Admiral Chen's flagship, which had somehow closed to point-blank range without being detected. Surrender your base and release the prisoners, Sarah's voice came over the communication channel. This is your only warning. Thaxel's 4 eyes narrowed as he stared at the human ship. In all his years of conquest, no one had ever demanded his surrender. The very concept was foreign to him. Human Admiral, he replied, you have surprised us today, but you are still outgunned and outnumbered. My reinforcements will arrive within the hour. Surrender now, and I promise you a quick death. Sarah's response was immediate and chilling. Commander, you made a mistake when you decided to process prisoners. You made an even bigger mistake when you tried to ambush us. But your biggest mistake was thinking that Deathworlders fight fair. As if on cue, the Vorthan base's defensive system suddenly went offline. The massive shield generators that protected the civilian processing centers shut down, leaving the prisoners' ships vulnerable but also accessible to rescue. What? Thaxel spun to face his tactical officer. How is that possible? Sir, it appears that the human scout ship we detected earlier wasn't just observing, it was infiltrating our systems. They've been inside our network for hours. Captain. Webb's voice came over the channel, calm and professional. Sorry about the deception, Commander, but we needed to make sure we could get those civilians out safely. Scout 7 to all rescue teams, the cages are open. The battle for Kepler 442. continued for another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Deathworlders had achieved something that no other species in galactic history had managed. They'd outfought, outmaneuvered, and outthought the Vorthan Empire. But more importantly, they'd rescued over 40,000 Coalition civilians from certain death. As the last Vorthan ship fled the system, Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, watching the massive evacuation operation. Medical ships were already treating the rescued prisoners, while engineering teams worked to repair the damaged Coalition vessels. "Ma'am," her communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the civilian ships. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was weak but filled with hope. "This is Dr. Lydia Oken of the Coalition medical ship Healing Light. We've been prisoners for 6 months. We never thought anyone would come for us." Sarah felt tears threatening to form. "Dr. Oken, this is Admiral Chen of the Sol Defense Force. You're safe now. We're here to make sure the Vorthons never do this to anyone again." "Admiral, how did you know to come? How did you know we were here?" "A brave ambassador named Kira Veltar sent out a call for help. We came as fast as we could." There was a long pause. Then, "Ambassador Veltar is dead, Admiral. Her ship was destroyed 3 days ago. But her message reached you?" "Yes, it did. And because of her courage, the Deathworlders are going to war." Chapter 4. The Tide. Turns 2 weeks after the rescue at Kepler 442, the war had spread across 17 star systems. The Vorthans, shocked by their first major defeat in decades, had responded with unprecedented brutality. Entire worlds were being subjected to orbital bombardment rather than invasion. If they couldn't conquer the galaxy, they would destroy it. But the Deathworlders were adapting faster than anyone had thought possible. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the war room aboard the converted space station Haven, watching the holographic tactical display that showed the current state of the conflict. The station had been hastily constructed from the wreckage of Vorthon ships, and it served as the command center for the largest military alliance in galactic history. "Sitrep," she called out as the various commanders filed into the room. War Chief Brekath, who had assumed command of the Korthak forces after Groktar's heroic death, spoke first. "The Korthak have secured the Rigel system. The Vorthans attempted to establish a forward base on Rigel 7, but we convinced them to leave." Sarah nodded. The Korthak had a gift for understatement. Intelligence reports suggested they'd fought a 3-day ground campaign against overwhelming odds, and somehow managed to not just survive but win. "The Zerian Collective has completed analysis of captured Vorthan technology," came the mechanical voice of Tactical Coordinator 7 Alpha. "Their weapon systems are approximately 30% more efficient than our previous estimates. However, we have identified critical vulnerabilities in their shield harmonics." "What kind of vulnerabilities?" Sarah asked. "Vorthon shields are optimized for high-energy plasma impacts. They are significantly less effective against kinetic projectiles and certain electromagnetic frequencies. We are adapting our weapons accordingly." War Master Kaney's report was the most unsettling. "The remnants have infiltrated the Vorthan communication network. We have been monitoring their strategic communications for the past week." "What have you learned?" "The Vorthans are not native to this galaxy. They are refugees from a galactic conflict that occurred approximately 50,000 years ago. They fled here after their homeworld was destroyed by something they call the consuming dark." Sarah felt a chill. "Are you saying they're running from something?" "Yes. And according to their communications, they believe that something is following them. Their genocide campaign is not just about conquest. It's about eliminating any potential allies for their enemies." War Chief Brakath growled. "Then they are cowards as well as murderers." "Perhaps," Kaney replied. "But they are also desperate. Desperate enemies are the most dangerous kind." Sarah studied the tactical display. "What's the current casualty count?" 17 Coalition worlds have been completely sterilized," 7 Alpha reported. "Estimated civilian casualties are in the billions. However, we have successfully evacuated 12 systems and established defensive positions around 37 others. And our own losses? 237 ships destroyed, 46 damaged beyond repair. Approximately 12,000 personnel killed in action. Brakath's voice was grim. But the Vorthans have lost over 800 ships. They are bleeding faster than we are. Sarah nodded, but she knew the math wasn't in their favor. The Vorthans had started this war with a massive numerical advantage. Even with the Deathworlder's superior tactics and technology, it was going to be a long, bloody conflict. There's something else, Caney said. The remnants have been analyzing Vorthan's strategic behavior. They are preparing for a massive assault on the Coalition's capital world, Centralis. Sarah's blood ran cold. The Coalition's capital was home to over 1 billion beings from hundreds of different species. It was the cultural and political heart of the galaxy's peaceful civilizations. Confirmed. They are massing their entire fleet for a single decisive strike. They intend to broadcast the destruction of Centralis to every inhabited world in the galaxy as a demonstration of their power. When? Within 72 hours. Sarah looked around the room at her allies. These were the galaxy's most dangerous predators. The survivors of the harshest worlds, the species that had learned to fight not just for survival, but for what they believed in. How many ships can we muster? The combined Deathworlder fleets can deploy approximately 900 vessels, 7 Alpha replied. The Vorthans will have at least 2,000 ships for the assault on Centralis. Then we'll be outnumbered 2-1. Yes, Brakath said, his voice carrying the hint of a smile. Finally, a fair fight. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. You're insane, all of you. We're talking about the largest space battle in galactic history, and you think being outnumbered 2-1 is fair, Admiral, Caney said, his voice carrying something that might have been amusement. You're forgetting something important. The Vorthans have been fighting coalition forces, peaceful species who built their ships for exploration and diplomacy. They've never faced an enemy that was designed for war. We are Deathworlders, Brakath added. We do not fight to win. We fight to survive, and survival is the only victory that matters. Sarah looked at the tactical display again. The Vorthans were moving their fleet toward Centralis, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what was coming for them. All right, she said. Let's show them what happens when you threaten everything we're fighting to protect. The battle for Centralis began with a single transmission broadcast on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. Supreme Commander Thaxel, aboard his flagship, Eternal Dominion, addressed the billion inhabitants of the Coalition capital. Citizens of the failed Serenity Coalition, his voice carried across the void. You have aligned yourselves with the galaxy's most dangerous predators. You have chosen war over peace, chaos over order. For this transgression, your world will serve as an example to all who would oppose the Vorthan Empire. The transmission cut to tactical displays showing the massive Vorthan fleet approaching Centralis. 2,000 ships, each one a monument to the Empire's military might. It was a sight designed to inspire terror and despair. But on the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Sarah Chen was smiling. All units, this is Admiral Chen. Our enemy has just made a critical error. They've told us exactly where they're going to be, and exactly when they're going to be there. They've also just announced their intentions to the entire galaxy. She paused, looking at the tactical display that showed the Deathworlder fleet moving into position. What they don't know is that we've been preparing for this moment for 2 weeks. They think they're fighting the same enemy they've been crushing for months. They're wrong. War Chief Brakath's voice came over the channel. Korthak fleet in position. We are ready to show these invaders what happens when they threaten the innocent. Zarian hunter-killers deployed, 7 Alpha reported. All weapon systems operating at maximum efficiency. Vanguard remnants are prepared, Caney said, his voice carrying undertones that made Sarah's skin crawl. The Vorthans will discover that some things are worse than death. All units remember the plan. This isn't just about winning a battle. This is about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Today we prove that there are some lines that cannot be crossed, some boundaries that must not be violated. The Vorthans approached Centralis in a massive formation. their ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that spoke of discipline and overwhelming force. They expected to face a desperate last stand by the Coalition's remaining forces. Instead, they found nothing. "Where are they?" Thaxel demanded as his sensors swept the space around Centralis. "The Coalition fleet should be here. The Deathworlders should be defending their allies." "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting some kind of energy signature from the planet's surface. It's unusual. Define unusual." "It appears to be a massive electromagnetic field generator. The entire planet is surrounded by some kind of barrier." Thaxel studied his displays. "Impossible. The Coalition doesn't have that kind of technology." "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm, professional, and utterly confident. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Sol Defense Force. Commander Thaxel, you are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately." "Human Admiral." Thaxel replied, "You are outnumbered 2-1. Your fleet is nowhere to be seen. Surrender now, and I will grant you the honor of dying in combat rather than execution." "Commander, you're making several incorrect assumptions. First, you assume we're going to fight you in conventional ship-to-ship combat. Second, you assume that we need to outnumber you to win. Third, you assume that this is just about military victory. Explain." "We're not here to fight you, Commander. We're here to judge you." As if on cue, the space around the Vorten fleet began to ripple. The stars themselves seemed to shift and bend as massive shapes emerged from hyperspace, not around the Vortens, but among them. The Deathworlder fleet hadn't positioned itself for a conventional battle. They'd positioned themselves for an execution. "All units," Sarah's voice rang out across the comm channels. "Weapons free. Show them no mercy." What followed wasn't a battle. It was a lesson in applied violence. The Deathworlders had spent 2 weeks studying Vorten tactics, analyzing their weaknesses and preparing for this exact scenario. They'd turned war into a science, and the Vorthens were about to receive a practical demonstration. The Korthak fleet attacked with the fury of pack hunters, their ships moving in coordinated patterns that maximized damage while minimizing losses. They'd learned to use the Vorthon's own formations against them, turning their disciplined order into a trap. The Zirian Collective demonstrated the difference between fighting and precision destruction. Their weapons didn't just damage Vorthon ships, they dismantled them with surgical precision, targeting specific systems to disable rather than destroy, leaving the crews alive but helpless. But it was the vanguard remnants who truly terrified the Vorthons. Their ships moved like living things, adapting to each attack, learning from each engagement. They didn't just hack the Vorten computer systems, they infected them with something that was part virus, part artificial intelligence, and part something else entirely. Within 30 minutes, the largest fleet in Vorten history was reduced to scattered debris and disabled hulks. The few surviving ships were broadcasting surrender signals, their crews begging for mercy. Supreme Commander Thaxel, his flagship crippled and his fleet destroyed, found himself staring at a communication screen showing Admiral Chen's face. "You wanted to send a message to the galaxy," she said. "Consider this our reply. The Deathworlders have heard the call for help and we've answered. Any species that commits genocide, that targets civilians, that believes might makes right, will find us waiting for them. You cannot defeat the entire Vorthon Empire," Thaxel said, his voice barely a whisper. "Commander, we just did. Your fleet was the pride of your military. Your ships were the finest your empire could build. Your tactics were perfected, over decades of conquest, and we destroyed you in 30 minutes. Sarah's expression hardened. "But more importantly, we've proven something to the galaxy. The age of conquest is over. The age of bullies and tyrants is ending. The Deathworlders have come to ensure that peace is protected not by the weak but by the strong. What happens to us now? That depends on you. The Vorthons can choose to continue this war, in which case we'll hunt down every ship in your fleet and destroy them. Or you can choose to surrender, face justice for your crimes, and learn to live as part of the galactic community rather than as its conquerors." Thaxel looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his fleet. What guarantee do we have that you won't simply exterminate us? Because we're not you, Sarah replied. We don't fight for conquest or glory. We fight to protect those who can't protect themselves. If you're willing to change, to make amends for what you've done, then the Deathworlders will help you find a better path. The transmission ended, leaving Thaxel alone with his thoughts and the knowledge that everything he'd believed about power and strength had been proven wrong in the span of a single battle. Epilogue. New Beginnings. 6 months after the Battle of Centralis, the galaxy was a very different place. The Vorten Empire had officially surrendered, its leadership facing war crimes tribunals while its population was slowly being integrated into the galactic community. The process wasn't easy. Generations of military conditioning weren't erased overnight, but it was progress. The Serenity Coalition had been rebuilt, but it was no longer the same organization. The new coalition charter included a provision that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. The Deathworlders were now full members, with their own seats on the governing council. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the new coalition headquarters watching the ships of a dozen different species work together to construct a massive memorial. The memorial to the lost would honor the billions who had died in the Vorthan War, but it would also serve as a reminder that some things were worth fighting for. Admiral, a familiar voice called out behind her. Sarah turned to see Dr. Lydia Oaken approaching, her coalition medical uniform bearing the new insignia that designated her as a liaison between the medical corps and the Deathworlder fleets. Dr. Oaken, how are our former enemies adjusting to their new lives? Better than expected, actually. The Vorthan rehabilitation programs are showing promising results. It turns out that once you remove the propaganda and the fear, most of them are just people trying to survive. They're not so different from us. Sarah nodded. And the other Deathworlders? How are they adapting to peacetime? That's more complicated. The Korthak are struggling the most. They're a warrior culture, and without an enemy to fight, they're having trouble finding their place. War Chief Brakath has been working with coalition psychologists to help his people transition to roles as protectors rather than conquerors. And the Zarion Collective? They've thrown themselves into reconstruction efforts. Apparently they find the mathematical precision required for rebuilding worlds almost as satisfying as the precision required for destroying fleets. They've already restored 3 of the systems the Vorthans sterilized. Sarah smiled. Leave it to the collective to find efficiency and compassion. What about the remnants? Dr. Oaken's expression grew thoughtful. War Master Caney and his people have been helpful, but they're still an enigma. They've established some kind of research facility in the Outer Rim, studying something they call the patterns of survival. I'm not sure any of us fully understand what they've become. As long as they're on our side, I'm content to let them remain mysterious. There's something else, Admiral. We've been receiving reports from the edge of the galaxy. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving in our direction. The Vorthans weren't lying about something following them. Sarah's blood chilled. How long do we have? Unknown. Could be years, could be decades. But whatever drove the Vorthans from their home galaxy is coming here. Sarah turned back to the viewport, watching the memorial construction continue. The galaxy had just learned to stand together against one threat. Soon, they might need to face something even worse. Then we'd better make sure we're ready, she said. The Deathworlders have taught the galaxy how to fight. Now we need to teach it how to survive. In the depths of space beyond the edge of the galaxy, something vast and ancient stirred. The consuming dark had been following the trail of the Vortans for 50,000 years, and it had finally found their refuge. But this time the dark would not find a galaxy of scattered, peaceful civilizations. This time, it would face something that had never existed before in galactic history. An alliance of the galaxy's most dangerous predators, united in their determination to protect the innocent. The Deathworlders had answered one desperate SOS. Soon, they would face a test that would determine whether their alliance was strong enough to protect not just their own galaxy, but the very concept of life itself. But that, as they say, is another story. For now, The galaxy was at peace. The weak were protected by the strong. The innocent were defended by those who had learned to fight not for conquest, but for survival. And somewhere in the void between stars, the echo of Ambassador Kira Veltar's final message continued to propagate, carrying with it a simple truth. Sometimes the most desperate calls for help are answered by the most unlikely heroes. The Deathworlders had come, and the galaxy would never be the same.